Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out Confession. Story 1. I was hurt and bullied and abused, so I took it out on others. When I was at high school, I hurt people. At the time, I was so self-centered and had very little awareness of people and how things I did/said affected them. Partly because I struggled socially and partly because I was alone. I was also didn't look or think beyond myself. I was bullied, hurt, sworn at, and more, so I took it out on others. The way I treated female students was disgusting. I spoke to them awfully and touched them inappropriately. I know I was part of me was looking support in completely the wrong way. This is on my mind every day. I scream at myself when I think of these times. I punish myself by cutting my wrists as the guilt and remorse eats away at me. I wish I could go back and prevent any of this happening. I deserve to die. Story 2. I went through my best friend's phone and found really bad messages about me. Okay, it was 4 AM and my friend had just fell asleep. I saw that her phone had went off with a message from a kid I'm friends with. She gave me her password and so I unlocked her phone to respond to the friend and tell them she was asleep. But when I opened their chat and messages, I saw my name. I couldn't just ignore it, so I ended up reading the message. Turns out that it was talking bad about me to the friend, and in response the friend had said more bad things about me. I was shaking. I wasn't meant to see the stuff they were saying about me, but it was really bad. They were saying bad things about my appearance and my personality. Things like, oh, she has no ass, LMAO, she's so insecure it's not even funny. She's so goddamn annoying, like she never shuts up. Honestly, why are we even friends with her? Like I'm done. It made me really upset. Now here's the issue, I feel really bad for looking at her private messages, but they were also about me. And I can't confront her about it because then she would know that I read them. Admittedly, I also scrolled up a bit and found more bad things about me. They were talking about everything I'd ever said that annoyed them, and every reason they have not to be friends with me. I'm ashamed that I ended up reading her messages, and that guilt will probably never leave, but also I'm heartbroken that the people I thought were my friends said those awful things about me. I didn't even realize they felt this way, and it's made me constantly aware of what I'm saying and what I look like. I wish I'd never looked, but I also don't know what to do now that I know I'm in a friendship that I know isn't working out for them. What do I do? Story 3. I found a wad of cash at a cell phone store but gave it to another customer. Just as the title states. I walked around the store asking if anyone was missing something important. Someone said yes and I gave them the money. It was a roll of $100, $50, and $20 bills. Frankly, I didn't want to leave the store with it. Story 4. I hit a parked car at my old job and never told anyone. I was leaving work one night and forgot I had turned my front wheels the entire way. Well, when I was leaving I put it in reverse and smashed the gas. Completely obliterated dude's back door. We didn't have cameras and there was nobody outside. So I left. Nobody ever found out. This happened years ago. The place has since closed down. Story 5. Set the clock 10 minutes ahead in a conference room to trick my manager. At my last job I set the clock 10 minutes ahead to play a prank on our manager during our weekly meeting. I forgot about it. 3 weeks later our manager comes out laughing his ass off. He said all of the managers couldn't figure out why all of their meetings kept feeling short, and then someone pointed out the clock was off. The whole team just started laughing knowing it was me. No shame, I love office pranks. Story 6. I scratched a car parked next to mine and drove away without saying anything. I was parking and accidentally scratched the car next to me when I was reversing. I panicked because it's the first time I've ever made a mistake like this and just drove away. It's not a major scratch, a little bit of my paint is noticeable on their car and there is white markings which can be rubbed off with hand. I feel awful for what I did and was going to leave a note but didn't have any pen/paper and just got really worried, so I drove off, which I know I shouldn't have done, The bad thing is I only passed my driving test 3 days ago. Story 7. I stole my housemate's scales despite my ed history. I suffered from an ed from the age of 14. Although growing up my parents definitely both exhibited traits of disordered thinking around food and weight, so it's probably been longer still. I'm better now and haven't allowed myself to weigh or check where I'm at, and when I've been tempted my friends and S/O have talked me out of it. Recently however, I bought a new phone and it came with a watch that tracks everything, which came with the temptation to count calories and be able to give more accurate measurements. One of my housemates knows about my history and has flat out refused to let me use their scales, even denying that there were any in the house until I mentioned maybe buying them to be able to weigh my cats. It was then that she admitted she does actually own some. My other housemate, however, isn't aware the full extent of the situation and has recently moved out. After they left, I checked their room just to make sure that there wasn't anything that would need cleaning before the new tenant moved in, and it was then that I found their scales, which were left in their wardrobe. Temptation for the better of me, and I found out that I'm 47.65 kilograms, but that was after I'd already drank some coffee, so it might be even better. When I was ill I had a target weight that I never quite managed to achieve, but it's really not that far below what I am currently. I know I shouldn't be proud or want to brag about it, and I know that if I told anyone close to me that they would get worried, but it thrills me to know that I can probably achieve that goal, albeit 12 years later than I started. Story 8. I once stole a tip from a bartender to drink more. Recovering alcoholic here. I was at a bar with my brother. I had $2 left. When my brother was leaving he left a $10 tip. I took his 10 and put my $2 where he was sitting, and got 2 more beers out of it. It was over 20 years ago. I've been sober for 20 and still feel bad about it. Story 9. I hit a parked car and there was no visible damage. It was a light bump and frankly my car looks like it was damaged more, but I went home. Story 10. I procrastinate on things and lie to others that I'm still working on it. Throughout my whole life I have been a procrastinator and a dreamer. I don't stay focused and my mind wanders. Throughout my life, it's always been the same thing from my parents. How is your homework coming along? How is your college application coming along? How is your studying coming along? How is your job search coming along? And I always lie that I'm doing good when really I am not. But I never want my parents' help, because whenever they help me, their criticism is very destructive. And their criticism will only get worse for the amount of time I waste trying to get things done without success. And even while knowing about that consequence, I still ignore it and continue to lie just to get them off my tail. I like to do things at my own pace without being pressured, but they are not okay with that, and neither is the world. I need to break out of this habit soon. Story 11. I threw out my grandmother's ashes and used the box to hide my drugs in. Being the degenerate hedonist I was at 16, I needed a place to hide my dope and my pills. My parents were clever. It needed to be hidden very well. Some place they would never think to look. One day I got to looking at Granny up on the shelf. Just a nice wooden box with an engraving on it. Lightbulb.jpg. I pick it up and notice the screws on the bottom. I fetch a screwdriver and crack open Granny's soon-to-be not-so-final resting place. There she was. Just a big plastic bag full of ashes. She was a mean old bitch. Alcoholic, abusive, pathological liar. Nobody really missed her. Very few cried at her funeral, and I think most were just relieved that the old hag finally keeled over. I didn't feel bad when I threw her ass in the garbage. Still don't. Every time I visit home, I can't help but smile when I see that box on the shelf. Story 12. Didn't say anything after being undercharged for a 6-pack. I finally got off work about 11:30 p.m. and wanted a cold one with dinner, so I stopped at a gas station not far from work. I picked up a sweet snack for work the next day, puppy chow, and headed to the beer cave. Walk-in beer cooler. They were out of my normal beer, so I thought I'd try something new. I saw a 6-pack of F5 IPA, grabbed that, and headed to the front. The young guy working the till was obviously very much over the night shift and just going through the motions of ringing people up. I've been there. So he scans one can of the six-pack, asks for my ID, I give it, he scans the ID and then the snack and says, $5.87. I already had my card out and stuck it in the reader at the same time my brain caught up and said, wait, that seems awfully cheap. I was expecting at least $12 for the six-pack alone. There wasn't a price in the beer cave for this IPA. And then a split second later, I realized that that was because these were actually the tall boy single cans you usually only buy one at a time, for like $3.69 each. But since these had been in the beer cave, no one had split up the six-pack yet to stock them like normal. And this guy ringing me up either didn't notice that or just didn't care, so he hadn't rung up the other 5 at all and by now the transaction was done and I still hadn't said anything so he just hands me the receipt, says have a good night. I say you too. And then I left with like $20 worth of free beer. It feels weird because I'm usually the type to say something but it was all over so quickly, I just left. Anyway, turns out I do like the IPA. So I will get it again sometime, but I won't expect the same discount. Story 13. Crashed a car as a valet and got away with it, somehow. For the past year I've been working as a valet for an upscale steakhouse. This happened my first day on the job. Our lot is about 20 spots long, with big square concrete pillars between every 3 spots. It was my first day so I was still trying to settle in and get comfortable with the way things run, and of course I wanted to impress so I was going as fast as I could within reason. Well, as more and more people showed up I guess I started to rush and as I was parking this brand new Toyota Camry I pulled forward to adjust and accidentally turned into a pillar, completely destroying the left side from the front fender to the back door. Since it was my first day I was too embarrassed and nervous to say anything. Like I said it was when I parked it so I had to keep working knowing that the customer could come out any second. Luckily it had gotten dark by the time they came out so I pulled the car up. They approached from the right and the left side was very dark so they didn't even notice. I was also holding the door open of course. My manager did see the damage but never said anything, probably just assumed it came in like that since the customers didn't mention it. Since then I haven't had a single problem, not a scratch. For what it's worth, most of our customers are very well off so I'm not exactly boiling over with guilt. Just grateful I got to keep the job and not pay for the damage. Some extra details: the customer never returned or called, and company policy is if an employee damages a vehicle they are either fired or charged for at least half of the damage. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.